Joining me now for more on this is Edmund Ghareeb. He is a professor at the American University in Washington. Professor, how much is the economic situation in Lebanon having an impact on the continued government dysfunction and further exacerbating the situation there?
Well, there's no doubt that the economic situation in Lebanon is very serious. There are problems that have to do with jobs, with electricity, with fuel. People are for the first time in decades, there are even reports of hunger in Lebanon. So the situation is very complicated. It's quite messy in many ways. And that situation is affecting the political developments on the ground. But basically, I think while that is an important factor, I think there are deeper issues that are involved in what's going on now in terms of what has happened today and the recent events. And that has to do more with a much bigger conflict, much more complex, that involves, first of all, ideological divisions, different political divisions between different forces on the ground in Lebanon. And also because what happens in Lebanon affects and is affected by what's happening also in the neighborhood and in the world, because there are many players in the Lebanese on the Lebanese arena, and all of that is beginning to affect the situation on the ground. And I think it's unfortunately what we have seen today is extremely dangerous. So far, at least, it appears that it's still containable to a certain extent, but I don't think it's going to take a great deal to see perhaps a much wider explosion. And that's what many people are very much worried about in Lebanon and in the world, those people who are following the situation in Lebanon and who are concerned about what's going on there.
Yeah, what about these sectarian tensions among Lebanese people? How much has that been exacerbated in the last year in the wake of the explosion that we saw last year?
Well, there's no doubt that I think it goes beyond the sectarian tension, but as you correctly pointed out, sectarianism has been a factor in Lebanon. It has contributed to two civil wars that took place. One took place in the 50s. And then the longer one that took place from 1975 until about 1990. But even then, there were divisions. It was not all sectarian in the sense that you had one sect versus another sect. There were even, for example, the general division was between the Maronite community, some of the Maronite militias in Lebanon, Christian militias, versus some Palestinians at that time. That's during the period between 1975 and 1990. While that took place, and that was very important, we saw even Christians that were on was seen on the nationalist side, and then we saw Muslims also on the other side. But what's very dangerous is that this is involves, first of all, there is that sectarian aspect. On the one hand, there are people who are very much concerned about the role of Hezbollah, about its influence in Lebanon, about its ability to have a militia. On the other hand, those who support Hezbollah see what has happened today as an attempt to undermine the Hezbollah and its supporters, to undermine what's called the resistance in Lebanon, and to draw it into a confrontation in Lebanon that would ultimately weaken it. And so what we have seen so far is that the government has tried to intervene. The Lebanese president has said Lebanon will not return to a backward, will not go back. It will not return to a civil war. But the danger is that it does not take much, and there is to explode the situation. And also, what we see on the ground as well is that it doesn't take much to ignite a new confrontation. So far, it seems that they have been able to contain it, to prevent the expansion of the conflict. But who knows what's going to happen? Lebanon is going through a very difficult period. There's a political turmoil. There's economic situation that's really desperate. There are sanctions on the country. There are those who feel that the explosion that took place in Beirut and killed many people last year should be investigated freely without pressure from one side. And so that's also another factor, because the reason why this, how it started, is that there was a protest against the judge, the investigator, who was investigating what happened, and he wanted to investigate a member of the Amal party, which is close to Hezbollah. While Hezbollah considered this as a politicization of the process and felt that it was aimed at Amal, the Amal movement, and which is an ally of Hezbollah, and at the Lebanese situation, and of course at them.
All right, we'll leave it there. Edmund Ghareeb joining us from Washington, D.C. Thank you for your time, Professor.